Do you get that constant nagging pain behind your shoulder blade? You know, the one that it feels like somebody is just taking a knife and just stuck it in there and starts to twist it. You sit there at your workstation and you can't get comfortable. Maybe you're driving in the car and you feel like it's not something that you want to do for any length of time. Well, tonight we're going to talk about where does that shoulder blade come from, that pain come from. And we're going to talk about just simply 3 easy steps, 3 simple and easy things that each and every one of you can do at home in order to help yourself eliminate that shoulder blade pain. Now, first things first, we have to understand where does this actually come from. Why is it that you might possibly feel that shoulder blade pain? Well, oftentimes, as we get people checked, and if you've never been under chiropractic care, that's always the very first thing. You need to get checked. Without getting checked, unfortunately, we never know exactly what's going on. We don't know why it is that, what's producing that shoulder blade discomfort. But as we have that information, oftentimes one of the things that we experience, we get to see on a regular basis, is the fact that that posture is off. In fact, one of the biggest postural distortions that contributes to this happens to be the fact that we start to roll our shoulders down. Now, as soon as we start to lose our posture, your inborn intelligence just simply kicks in. It knows exactly what needs to be done. And that is, it figures, well, listen, if you're rolling your shoulders forward like this, it doesn't want you to continue in that direction, so it locks the shoulder blades down. And you have some very tiny muscles on the back of your shoulder blade that they're responsible to help to actually keep it against your rib cage. Let's imagine they weren't working. Well, what would end up happening is your shoulder blades would actually start to float around and away from the rib cage. Your body doesn't like that. Your brain knows it doesn't like that. So what it's going to do is it's going to tighten them down against your rib cage and hold them there. Well, unfortunately, over time, that forms adhesions. Those muscles get knots around them. And yeah, there's a couple different muscle groups that are around the side of the shoulder blade also. Whether we talk about the rhomboid muscles, whether we talk about the latissimus dorsi muscles on the other side, we know that there's a number of different muscle groups that could kick in and contribute to that uncomfortableness. Well, listen, if you haven't been checked, let's go back to the very first thing. Get checked. Because in the moment of knowing that posture is going to also help explain some of which muscles are going to be involved. Also, what things need to be done to truly reverse this. But let's talk very simply. And these are some things that you can do at home in order to help yourself, in order to unlock that shoulder blade of yours. Help it to get it to move a little bit more freely the way it's supposed to, and in the end, help eliminate some of that uncomfortableness that might be there. Now, I have to say, I'm not your doctor. If, in fact, you're not from the Limerick Chiropractic Center and I've never evaluated you, I have to tell you that. Because in turn, there's going to be some things that we have to assume. Like your spinal function, those subluxations, those bones that are out of place, they're being worked on in order to help to train the spine to be back to where it's supposed to be. Well, that's something that if in fact you're under chiropractic care, you know is always the most important thing in the correction of any of these problems. Because without the nervous system connecting and telling those muscles and tissues what to do and how to function, they're going to simply go back to the way they were before. But if you are under chiropractic care, that's absolutely wonderful. Let's talk about a couple of things that you can do at home personally in order to help to get yourself moving better. So number one are 2 very simple exercises. One is a cat-cow and the other is what's called thread the needle. And both of these are designed in order to create flexibility in this middle part of your back, in this chest area. You know, unfortunately, from sitting behind the wheel of a car and getting tense and stiff, our rib cage oftentimes locks down. As we're sitting there in front of a computer and we start to roll our shoulders, our rib cage starts to not move as freely as possible. These two exercises, they're designed just to create motion. And when we look at it, and I'll demonstrate this for you, when we look at, what it takes to do a cat-cow, it's simply raising that mid back up as you're bringing your chin down, and then going in the opposite direction, which is lowering that chest and raising your head. And continuing to slowly go back and forth through this motion in order to create that flexibility. Now, the second exercise, that thread the needle, is really simple. It's pivoting our chest. It's creating rotation. So we're going to take our hand and we're going to pass it right in front of our chest, and we're going to bring it through. Now, we're going to want to make sure that as we're bringing it through, we're reaching as far as possible. And we're going to do this exercise both on the right and the left side. And as we do this, one of the things that you're going to experience is the fact that you're going to be able to rotate through more and more and more. And that's a blessing with, as we start to stretch muscles, is the fact that our muscles were designed to be changed. And if we provoke them, they very quickly will allow us to stretch them out. These are much different than other tissues in our body. In fact, when we start talking about changing curves, the ligaments, they take much longer to stretch out. It takes 8 minutes for those tissues just to start to relax so that they can be changed, so that they can be pliable and they're capable of actually being put into a new position. So we have those two exercises. Now, another thing that you can do in order to create flexibility is use a foam roller. And these are fantastic, in order to actually create mobility in the spine and around those spinal areas, in order to get you to that place where you're not hunching, but you're actually holding your chest up and back. Not just rolling this pin up and down the body as you're laying over top of it, but you're also capable of laying over top of this and laying over it and actually creating that ability to open up your chest. And I love the fact that, we have these simple to use tools that, we're capable of using on a regular basis, and we can do these at home. Now, the very last thing, and many of you at the Limerick Chiropractic Center have already seen these little tubes, these little bands, and we've cut them down to size for you. Because what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to actually create pressure behind the shoulder blades so that it forces the shoulder blades to move, but it also contracts the muscles, which are going to then continue that motion in order to unlock the shoulder blades. Now, this is a very simple exercise. In fact, you just take the tube and you just let it lay across your hands, and all we're going to do is close our hands. We keep our thumbs pointed out, and then we're going to pull our shoulders back first. Sort of like preloading the gun, okay? You got to load that up. We want to feel right between the shoulder blades. We want to feel that tightness. We want to feel all those muscles coming together. And then, once we've actually felt that, then it's time to open this up, to make that W with your elbows. We want to feel that pressure behind our mid-back. We want to feel those muscles bunching up even more. Now, the great thing is those muscles are attached to the shoulder blades. So all of a sudden, we're creating that additional motion in there, which allows our shoulder blades to move more back into place where they're supposed to be. Now, for some of you, listen, this is a great place to start. In fact, you might be working with a piece of tubing like this for quite a long time. For others, they might have to move into using a weight in order to help to replicate that motion where they're capable of actually doing this exercise with that additional force. Now, everybody's different. Not everybody is the same. So what works for one might not necessarily work for us all. In the end, the wonderful thing is to recognize we're not stuck. Now, I'm sure that as you're listening to this, you're probably thinking about somebody out there that as you imagine them, you can see that poor posture with them doing this. You know, and we don't have to talk about just those old women. We don't have to talk about just the young kids sitting there in their workstation like this, you know, on their iPads or Chromebooks or their laptops. We could be talking about the guys in the gym, and you've seen them, where their shoulders are so rounded forward. They've worked all these anterior muscles, but they haven't worked the muscles in their back properly, and literally their body is doing this, and in fact, those shoulder blades oftentimes are screaming back there because the muscles are straining, the nerves underneath there are being irritated, and the body is not in balance the way it's supposed to be. You probably know people like that. I know people like that. And the sad thing is that they don't know what you and I know. In fact, one of my greatest joys is as we share information, hearing back from patients all the time, the fact that they shared this piece of information with one of their friends or their family members or a neighbor, and they started doing it, and it created change. It created that positive change for them. And I love the fact that, you know, in the moment, you and I get to do things like that. We get to share this information with others to help just simply get them unstuck. You know, my first goal is to obviously make sure that people get their posture checked. That people understand the health of their body. Where are they? Without knowing that simple thing, well, it's hard to say whether chiropractic is right for you or any other treatment is right. But what we do know is once that information is there, it's easy to understand. But what's next? What's next in your journey? What's next in the process? Until then, everything else is a maybe. So one of my really big asks of each and every one of you out there is quite simply share this information. Share this information with your Facebook group. It only takes but a moment. We don't know how far-reaching it's going to be in somebody else's life. But we recognize that unless you and I do our part, nobody ever gets to hear this information. As always, I ask you to like this video. It helps to just simply promote it so that more people in our local community get to see this information. But I want to hear from you. I want to hear your comments on what you took away from watching the video today. As always, I'm Dr. Joseph Baker from the Limerick Chiropractic Center.